You, Henry, Fritz Stansel, Seymour Oken, and Eldon Rosegart, you decided to start the Falcone International Festival for the euphonium. Tell me how that decision came about. Were you just sitting around
actually,
talking,
I think some of it got the germ of it started with the overseas trip because it was the same people, the same venue, and so forth. And we did that. Well, it wasn't for Fritz Stansel. This festival would not exist today. Fritz, more or less, I think, started it. It was his facility in Blue Lake, which had the facility and the reputation. And Seymour Oken was chairperson. But I think Fritz sort of called all the shots for the first couple of years. And since then, he has more or less divorced himself from the festival. But Seymour and I went back many, many years. We played together in the Michigan State Band. We were both flute players. And we were together for a couple of years, and we were friends, and we were involved in a lot of projects. Every time Seymour had a project, the first person he'd call would be me, and I was just ignorant enough to say yes. And so we got involved with the trip. Well, then it went into the competition. And but if it hadn't been for Fritz, it probably would not have happened. And then we got Eldon aboard. And then as it went on, there were more people like Roger Barron, who was one of the first ones in there. I don't remember when Marty came aboard, but he was early on, too.
Good.
And then my friend Tom Broca worked with me for quite a few years when we taught school together. And I got him in, and he did most of the jobs I did then after. He grew into it.
He grew into it. So this, the first year was 1986, I believe. And so there was, the decision was made to have a student competition and an artist level competition.
Yeah, I'd like to go back a little bit before that, though.
Sure.
The reason we did it, we wanted to do something in memory of Leonard.
Absolutely.
And I don't know where the initial thought came from. I wouldn't be surprised it came from Fritz Stansel. To do something with a baritone, because Leonard always, he talked me quite a bit about how the baritone was sort of disappearing from the musical scene. But if you think about it, it's not in a symphony. Those days, they had the big dance bands. It wasn't the dance bands. The only thing was concert bands. So the best way would be to foster the instrument. And the best way to do that would be through this competition and commissioning works for the instrument. And, well, we went from there. And we joked about it because Seymour and I were both flute players advocating the baritone euphonium.
Promoting an instrument that you...
Well, we were doing it for Leonard Falcone as well.
You did it for Leonard.
Actually,
Well, and again, it goes back to what we were talking about a little earlier about how he really is credited with bringing the baritone into prominence as an instrument. And so with this festival idea...
It continued it.
It continued it and brings it, and so now it's a real international competition, and the euphonium, and then is now a highly regarded instrument. I can't imagine it's an easy one to learn, but I think it's a really remarkable thing. And then so you have the competition for a few years, and then you expanded it to include master classes and concerts. So tell me a little bit about the master classes and the concerts that were part of the competition.
Well, the artists that came to perform, and they usually served as adjudicators also, would run these master classes. So it was an opportunity for example, I can't think of names, but the man came from Japan, from a world authority on the baritone. People learned from him these sort of things.
Okay, then when then a few years later, you decided decision was made to include the tuba. Why was that included? I'm curious.
Well, I really don't know, but this was one of the things that Leonard was worried about, or not worried about, but concerned about. In universities now, there aren't any more euphonium teachers. They're all tuba teachers teaching euphonium, which tells us something. So that was probably one reason. These men there were teaching both instruments. And then it expanded, got more people involved, too.
Right.
Yeah. Part of the problem initially, way on, was to get more exposure to the festival. And that we weren't getting a proper exposure. And one thing we did, Roger Barron and I remember pushed this through, we started a tuba ensemble that played, and that would bring people from the area in and to help. And I think that's one thing that sort of maybe helped the
festival
getting the tuba involvement.
Right. Okay. Well,
this past summer was 29th summer that we've had the festival.
28th, I think.
28th.
Yeah. Many years.
That's a long time.
And you have students and artists that come from all over the world.
We do.
Which is really remarkable. It's a 4-day festival.
4 days.
4 days. Sue found a scrapbook, and I thought I would just have you to look at this scrapbook and see if this doesn't tell me a little bit about some of the things in here. There's some photos and some letters from former students and artists.
Well, the first one is Stephen Mead, who was, he might even be the leading authority in the world on euphonium now, from England. The first letter here, guest artist, 1990.
There's some remarkable photos in there, too, of students and...
Yeah, they're letters that students. Here's the girl from Japan, 1989. Going too fast, Beryl?
No.
This one is to you. Well, as I look through these...
If you've noticed, they've all been written.
Oh, yeah, they're thanking you because you were the presenter of the awards.
I had the fun part of it.
That is the fun part, giving
That's
them
what they
the
are.
awards.
Yes. Well, they're just names from people all over the world that are recipients or winners. There you are. There's some Japanese people.
Last summer we had somebody from... where was he from?
An artist or a student?
A student.
Portugal. Is that from Portugal?
Portugal. That has your name on it. That was, you did get a letter now and then.
Yeah, this is a good letter telling about a lot of it. Roger Barrett's involvement. And, well, here's some names. Marty Erickson, Phil Cinder, Ellen Rosegard, Tim Skubik, who was our announcer for many years, Maury Oken, Seymour's son, Earl Lauder, Don Flickinger, who was very instrumental, and we went on, Stephen Mead, Tom Brokaw, Louis Maltonado, Bill and Jim Gray, and Rod Ellis and John Leiprant.
So it's like you have a couple of generations of people
yeah,
coming.
well, the little story.
Please.
When Seymour and I were involved in this, we had a friend who went to college with us named Emil Ellis. And Emil, in fact, he'd gone to high school with Seymour at Highland Park. And Emil said to us, "This is very fine what you fellows are doing," and so forth and so on. He said, "But you're just educators." He said, "What you need is a good businessman." So we figured, well, we'll get Emil on. Emil said, "No, not I, my son." So he got Rod Ellis in, and Rod's been with the foundation ever since then. In fact, he's been on the Blue Lake Fine Arts Board of Directors. That's where he got in. David Cleveland.
That's you.
That's a letter I wrote in 1995 with some history in there. I should have read that before I came today.
You can take a quick glance at it, and anything that pops out, let's talk about.
Well, it says, I remember with affection many of the early competitors and have followed their careers with interest in the ensuing years. Some of these are Mark Dickman, Roger Oyster, Lance LeDuc, Ken Overton, John Cox, Jeremy Van Hoy, Dave Cleveland, Laurie Taylor, Matt Trotman, the soloists from Japan, I didn't put their names down, and many others. And most of those people have gone on to play in the service bands or teaching in universities and have reputations.
It sounds like a lot of these people have...
One little
Fabulous.
girl that came from Japan
So tell me about her.
eventually wound up in Germany. I don't know the story of that, but she did marry a musician from one of the German bands and lives there now and has a little girl.
Oh.
I often hear from her at Christmas time.
Well, hopefully that little girl will grow up and come to the Falcone Festival. That would
Wouldn't that
really
be
be
nice?
wonderful. Wouldn't that be great? So let's talk a little bit about the behind the scenes. I mean, the festival is going on. The students are practicing all the time. They're taking master classes. They're competing. But there's a lot of stuff that has to go on behind the scenes. And I understand that the people who work behind the scenes refer to themselves as the elves.
The elves, yes.
Tell me about the elves. I think we have two of
I
them
think
here.
you have two of the elves behind you right now.
So what did the elves do?
Well, they prepare the schedules. They meet the trains and the planes and the buses that are bringing the students in and see that they get back on them when it's all over and they get headed for home straight. They make reservations for their accommodations at the motel.
They run errands. They do the announcing.
And answer.
They do anything that needs to be done, basically.
So they help make it happen.
When we started the competition, it wasn't as large as it is now, of course. And I did a lot of those running around things, helping arrange the party at the end and the housing, a lot of things that Sue Topping does now and Tom Broca does. But it takes more people because the thing is larger now.
So it's grown quite a bit from 1986 to 2013. It must be really quite an amazing sight now, with it growing larger, and of course the prize money is now more. So do you ever have to turn anybody away? Do you have a limit on how many people that can come per summer?
Oh, yes. I can't speak real well because I only worked with the first 7 years, which was 21 years ago, I guess, if I do my arithmetic correctly. So I really don't know. But people try it, they audition.
They audition.
There's a committee, and they audition by tape, required numbers, and so forth. And most of the elimination is done then. Right. Only the finalists come to the camp. So
you get the cream of the group, which is really, they've already gone
Three come to the finalists.
32.
So they already come having gone through one level of competition.
Oh, yes, very much so, because there's...
so they're raring to go. They get there.
And there's a committee that does that, and of course somebody heads that committee.
Right. So are you haven't gone back to the camp then for the competition lately, or?
I went 2 years ago.
You went 2 years ago. Okay.
You've been more years than that, 2 years.
Well, 2 years, the last one I went
That
to.
was the last one.
Just as a sort of a guest.
And
to see everybody and listen to everybody play the horns. Because they play so beautifully, so magnificently.
It has to be so amazing because you have that sound and it must carry through the woods and things like that. So it must be just an amazing sound.
And as I recall, we only had 1 year that it rained.
Oh, that's lucky.
And we had to move all of the competition from that evening up on the stage. The stage is well covered. So the students at the camp, who were the center of the band that played the accompaniment, got to go back to their cabins. But we went ahead with the competition.
That was the...
rain or shine.
1 year, the rain, I remember when I was at the time, and
We've been lucky
they moved some of the competition in what was the dining room. because it's the only big room that I think the show wasn't built in. And I remember it was hot and steamy.
Oh, my.
And the poor soloists, you know, they're nervous anyway. Remember one Japanese young man came up to play, and he, extremely polite, he bowed to the audience, he bowed to the announcer, he bowed to the chairperson, he bowed to each judge. I said, by the time he gets through, he'd be all tired out to play. And it's raining like everything outside. I remember that.
And all of this while it's raining.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I don't have too many other questions. Do you have any other stories you'd like to tell and have for the archives so people...
Well, I can tell a little bit my own involvement.
Sure.
When we started, as I mentioned, Fritz was sort of running things, and he was a little leery about having all the adjudicators be those excellent players and university people and so forth. And he wanted one down-to-earth educator on the panel. So it ended up with either Seymour Oken or I, and Seymour was too busy running things, so I inherited it. And I was the only one on the panel that was not a brass major. But I enjoyed it. I was always in line with everyone else, and only one person one time took me to task. His son was there and finished third, I remember. He said, "What do you know about a brass instrument?" I said, "Well, I've been judging this for quite a few years and teaching it, and music's music. Either you play the right notes at the right time, with the right intonation, the right tone, and play in the right style." Well, he couldn't argue with me, but he wasn't too happy with me. The only incident I had. But it was enjoyable working with those fine men from around the world as an adjudicator.
Oh, absolutely.
We've had students repeat, too. If one year they didn't reach the top, they came back the next year. So we've had...
They had people participate that came back as soloists and adjudicators. So you could see the
cycle
return.
continues.
Yeah, the cycle, which is...
That's great.
You're right, it's great.
Oh my goodness! So they start out coming as students. They go back home and start their careers. Now they're coming back to be judges and to
and
teach
foster
the younger talent.
The judges cannot see the soloist at the time they play their piece. They are behind a screen.
So they don't know who
so
they're
they
listening
never
to.
know who they are listening to.
Sort of a blind.
The first time that the student plays is without accompaniment.
So
The second day they have a piano accompanist. So somewhere in there they have to practice with that person so that they are together. And then third time is the concert.
Oh, wow.
With a band and directed by Donald Flickinger, and who's an extremely important cog in the wheel.
He's been involved for a long time.
Yes, with Blue Lake and with the festival. He's an excellent band director and works well with the soloists.
Oh, that sounds amazing. So any other stories you would like to tell us about Leonard, to give us an idea of who this amazing person...
I think he was associated with Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp for many long years, because we used to go and spend 2 weeks. He would be invited as a guest conductor for 2 weeks out of the 8-week session. And I know we always look forward to going because we had our own little cabin, and the girls kind of grew up there.
Well, I'm sure they must have wonderful memories of it.
They do. They do.
So any other memories about Leonard Falcone you'd like to share with us, or?
Well, even after he was not able to conduct, we still went 2 or 3 different summers at the end, just to be at Blue Lake. And we stayed the whole 8 weeks in the cabins up there.
So he really loved it up there.
Yes, he did, very much.
It sounds like very special.
A lot of people don't realize the reputation he had as an educator, a band director, besides being a baritone soloist throughout the country, maybe the world for that matter. Everybody had great respect for him. And we were young students. We were afraid of him. I mentioned that to Beryl one time. Beryl said, "Afraid of Leonard? Heaven's sakes." But we were. He could look right through you, you know. And then I never really got to know him till I was an adult afterwards. And we adjudicated together festivals and traveled together. And there's some stories involved in that too. And
such as? Tell me one of those stories.
I'll tell you one. We were judging in Lake Odessa. And he rode with me, and I had a little Mustang, 6-cylinder, stick-shift Mustang.
Wow.
And we were in a little motel down there, you know, mom and pop thing. In the morning, I went to pick him up, and he said, "Henry," he said, "I've been ill all night." He said, I can't do it. I can't adjudicate. Well, we're sort of out, more or less out in the country out there, and I didn't know what to do. I said, "Let's go to the festival site, and we'll see what happens." So we went to the festival site, and they immediately tried to get a replacement for him, which in the morning. Well, Leonard was there, and he was in bad shape. He was sick. And so we said, "Well, why don't you take my car and drive it home?" Well, Leonard never had a great reputation as being a great driver, which was a bit of a joke among all of us. And so he gets in the car, and he said, "I haven't driven a stick shift in a long time." So we all took him out in the parking lot, and he got in my little Mustang, and he drove it around, and all the band directors are out there, and the judges and so forth. And finally he figured out he could handle it, and he took off. And that's the last I heard of him. So I never knew what happened to my car. Well, I drove home. Another man was judging, lived in the area, drove me home. And so I said, "Drive me up to Charles Street and see what..." Got up to Charles Street. There sits my car in front of the house with the key still in the ignition, in one piece. So he made it home ill.
So not the best driver. Oh, dear.
No, in fact, when the first trip we ever took to Italy, the girls were quite young yet, and he had made arrangements ahead of time to rent a car. So we went to the garage in Rome where we were supposed to pick up the car. And so we were happy with what it was. It was a bright red one with 4 doors. And Leonard said, "No, you drive." I said, "What? Out in that Italian traffic, I'm going to drive. You drive, I'll tell you where to go."
Oh, no.
I never drove with such a shaky steering wheel in my life as I did. But once I got used to it, it was kind of fun because it was on the same way that we drove, same side of the street.
Oh, good.
And that sort of thing.
Helpful.
But then he'd say, "Why didn't you turn at that corner?" I said, "You didn't tell me to turn at that corner." He kept forgetting where he was supposed to tell me I was supposed to turn. But then, later on, when we had driven into other parts of Italy where his family still resided, he said, "You better let me drive." I said, "That's fine with me, but you don't have to. I've kind of learned how to do this." So I drove, but he said, "You know, they think that I'm not the man of the house. You're doing the driving of the car." So that was sort of a family joke that we had.
He didn't want to drive into where his family was.
That's right.
And have you at the wheel.
That's right. Exactly.
His driving, I've told the story a few times, and he told it to me. When he went in the Army, he could do 3 things. He could play the baritone magnificently, direct bands, and drive a car. And so he was assigned as a chauffeur.
Oh, no.
He was at Fort Custer, right, Battle Creek, down the road here. And the man to whom he was assigned was an officer who happened to be from the state of Michigan, who happened to come to all Leonard Falcone's concerts in Michigan State. So here he was, admiring Leonard, who was his chauffeur. He felt sort of chintzy about the whole thing. Well, then Leonard finally got out of that. He got in a band at Fort Custer, and I think he was playing 4th chair baritone because everyone else outranked him. They all had stripes in their sleeves. But then, as he told me, he said they sent me. He finally got a job as a band director. They sent him to a newly formed glider base in Arkansas. They just opened up. Everything was muddy clay and so forth. And he said they sent me 16 musicians. He said 9 of them could read music. Well, shortly after that, he got out of the Army, which is probably a good thing.
Sounds like it would have been a very frustrating experience.
I think Michigan State was working very hard to get him out of the Army all the time that he had to be there.
Yeah, I when I was doing the background reading, he was basically in the Army for one quick year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know that the university had a lot to...
Well, they got him, somebody, I don't know who did it, maybe you can help me, Beryl. He got him a job in a defense factory in Ann Arbor. But I think at the time, too, you could get out because of the age. They were getting more younger men in.
Right.
And then once he got him out, it was just a matter of point to get him back up here. And another selling point was Michigan State was full of what they call ASTP students, men in service, being trained here. And so, plus that with the ROTC and everything, it was a logical move. I think Roy Underwood, who was the head of the School of Music then, was very instrumental. In fact, Roy Underwood directed a band one year when Leonard was gone.
He wasn't happy with that. He wanted his director back.
That's right.
Well, then he was lucky he got back instead of spending, all the way to 45.
And he came back and met Beryl, see.
Well, and that's even a better thing. Okay. Well, anything else that you'd like to tell us about? Any fun things about Leonard that you might want to share, or not really?
Right off the top of my head.
Oh, that's okay. Sorry?
Making spaghetti dinners.
Oh, the spaghetti dinners. Tell me about Leonard's spaghetti dinners.
Well, he enjoyed cooking, and the spaghetti especially. So whenever we had guests, he said, "I'll do the cooking. You can do the rest of the dinner." So he always made spaghetti for any guests that we had. So you knew you had the real thing.
The real deal, the real spaghetti.
Plus, he made the spaghetti too. Remember cutting little fine bits. Yeah.
Well, I'd just like to maybe say one thing.
Sure.
Going back to the competition, which is basically why we're here.
Yes.
The importance of the two men, of Seymour Oak and Fritz Stanzel, that really were the foundation of the whole thing.
They're the ones who
without
really,
them, they're
never would have happened.
Yeah.
Right.
I was part of it, but they were it.
They made the competition.
They made it. They built it.
Eldon Rosegart was on that
Eldon
original.
did some too.
Anything else about the competition you'd like to add, or?
It's still going strong.
And you're happy about that? Good.
Yes.
Well, when you start something and comes to successful fruition, it's rewarding.
It has to be very satisfying. Yeah. Do you guys have anything else you'd like to add? Or any questions you'd like to?
Pretty much there.
I think we're good.
All right.
And I thank you very much for your time. I'm glad you came, and I learned a lot, and thank you.
Is it on?
Sure.
Oh, because we'll go home. We'll go home and think of a half a dozen things that we should have said.